Sure. It's a pleasure for me to introduce a neighbor and a friend, Teresa Mayne.
Okay.
I first met Teresa when she was working in research at the Oregon Social Learning Center, and they were the star program in the state, and I always admired people who worked in that program. She was there for 15 years. She volunteered for 4J for another 15 years, working with her kids. And she began an interest in service dogs a few years ago. She'll give us more information about the when, but she was trying to work with her daughter and a dog in selecting a dog to help be a service dog. They learned a lot in the process. That situation didn't work out. And she received some more training with a group called the Joys of Living in Assistance Dogs about a year ago. And they were trained to be puppy socializers. And I was out, we were getting mail together on our street, and I was talking to her, and I was fascinated by the stories she told and what the things they have done. So rather than me babble on, let me introduce you to Teresa and let her share the story.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Glenn.
You're welcome.
It's lovely being your neighbor.
Thank you.
Glenn and Sharon are the best. After trying to owner train a service dog for my daughter who has PTSD, we became involved with an organization in Salem, Joys of Living Assistance Dogs. They are an ADI accredited organization, which is Assistance Dogs International. And they train dogs for mobility and PTSD. I'm sure you've heard of service dogs too, guide dogs for the blind, and diabetic alert dogs. So different organizations train for different purposes because the training is individualized for what the recipient needs. So this organization trains for mobility and for PTSD. My daughter would be so upset with me if I didn't first share something. It's a passion of hers. So I'm sure maybe all of you don't know this, but a service dog is a dog that's trained individually to do tasks to mitigate a disability. Emotional support animals are an animal that an individual has to provide support for them, emotional support, but they're not trained to do tasks. So service dogs and emotional support animals have access differently to public settings. And there's quite a bit of abuse out there with people bringing emotional support animals into places that allow service animals, but not emotional support animals, which makes it hard for people who have service animals because their service dog needs to focus on them. And it can be difficult for a handler to be working with their dog and trying to navigate other dogs in areas where they don't belong. And the third is a therapy animal, a therapy dog. And those dogs are trained to provide comfort to other people. So for example, hospitals or courts or schools will often bring in therapy dogs. I just had to do that for my daughter's sake. So this organization trains for mobility and for PTSD. And I just want to share a little bit. Anybody can jump in at any time, by the way. Don't feel free to just jump in with questions. The unique thing about this, well, not unique, there are several service dog organizations that partner with prisons. This organization partners with 2 prisons in Oregon, the Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution and Shutter Creek. They also are unique in that they have partnered with the Oregon State Hospital. So they have some staff members in the Oregon State Hospital that assist with training, and some of the patients who are doing well get to also help with that. So the way this worked pre-COVID-19, I'm not going to talk about now, but pre-COVID-19, the dogs are trained in prison, and this program actually has a whelping program in prison as well. So it's one of the only ones, I believe, in the country where the puppies are actually born in prison. And the inmates, right from the start handling the puppies, getting them used to different stimulation, which increases their chances of being successful service dogs. When they reach a certain age, the puppies rotate out of prison every 2 weeks and come to trained handlers, puppy socializers for 2 weeks. So my daughter and I spent several months in Salem training to become puppy socializers, and then had 2 dogs that rotated to us for socialization. We had Brave and Whisper. So when Brave was in prison receiving training from the inmates, we would have Whisper and we'd be socializing Whisper. Then 2 weeks later, Whisper would go in for training and Brave would come out to us for socialization. It's a really beautiful program. It really supports prison reform for inmates. The dogs get amazing training, very consistent training with the inmates. And then they come out to socializers like us who take them around the community and expose them to different things and reinforce the training that they received in prison. It's just, I have to say, it's very humbling, and I truly feel like it's an honor to be a part of a program that works with inmates for inmate reform. Joyce St. Peter, the director of this program, has done a beautiful job partnering with prisons, and that part just makes me so happy. So I'm just going to quickly check my notes and see if there's anything else. There's some links to things. There's a beautiful article in Eastern Oregon Correctional, in Eastern Oregonian. There's an article on prison puppies that's beautiful. Can I send some links to you via email, Glenn? I'm not very tech savvy, and people could look if they wanted for more information.
On the screen, you can hit chat and put the links right there. And Grace will get them and you'll have them to everybody.
Okay, I can try and do that at the end, maybe. I'm so not tech savvy. I'm afraid I'll lose you if I hit chat. Well, and I'll just tell you now, Joys of Living Assistance Dogs, you can see more about them at www.joysdogs.org. If you just typed in Eastern Oregonian prison puppies, you'd see a beautiful article about the whelping program. It just truly warms my heart to see inmates being there for the birthing of puppies and then taking care of them those first critical few months. And then on Facebook, there's a Joys of Living Assistance Dogs. If anybody wants to look on Facebook, they post fun pictures of the different things the dogs are doing in the community. I just thought I would talk a little bit about some of the tasks that we do for PTSD. These dogs are trained for both. Sometimes people have both disabilities. They have a disability where they need some mobility assistance and PTSD. But I think just with time, I'll just talk about PTSD. And again, feel free to jump in.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is it a particular breed of dogs that you're mostly working with?
They breed in a breeding pool. So they breed in a pool with other service dog organizations like Guide Dogs for the Blind, and the dogs that they tend to use are golden retrievers and labs. So we do have a few pure golden retrievers in the program. Brave was a pure golden, and Whisper is a half golden and half lab. They're very smart animals. They breed for specific traits. So these dogs are able to focus, they mature quickly. They're able to be active, work with someone all day long. For example, one of the recipients had a stroke, so received the dog for mobility, and the dog literally follows him around in his wheelchair all day, helping to open doors, close doors, pick up objects, take his socks off and put them in a laundry basket and pull the laundry basket into the laundry room. They're trained to do so many things. It's just lovely. So so they breed with other service dog organizations. The tasks for PTSD, I wanted to say one other thing before getting into tasks. I have to admit that before we started this journey with my daughter, sometimes I would see people in a store with a service dog, and it looked like a very well-behaved dog and was wearing a service dog vest, but I didn't really see anything other than the dog walking beside the handler. And I didn't really understand what purpose, what the task the dog was doing. As we started to research how helpful it would be for my daughter, it was recommended by her doctors and psychiatrists for PTSD. I started to learn all the things the dog can do. So there's a lot of hidden things that you don't see. So just because the dog is just walking along beside someone, you might not understand what that dog is doing for them. And I think that's really important, especially with PTSD. Just having the dog next to you on left side or right side provides you with a little bit of protection and a little bit of space from people. If you're starting to get very anxious, or if you're having a flashback, the dogs are trained to position wherever you put them. So for example, if I feel like if I'm having starting to get very anxious or a panic attack or a flashback, I can put the dog across, which is across the front of me, and the dog stays in that position and provides me some space from people. There's a cue called cover, which is the dog goes behind you and stands lengthwise behind you and provides cover from behind to give space. Another way they can give space and provide grounding if someone's feeling very anxious is you can put them in a cross in front of you, and then there's a cue called curl. So they go across the front of you this way, and then they lay down and curl up against you on top of your feet. And so if you're standing in line and it's feeling overwhelming, the dog can lay on top of your feet and provide grounding for you, and just kind of start to bring your heart rate down. They can also curl on your side and put pressure against your leg. They have an inline cue, which puts them in between your legs and sitting. Which one helps to get them out of the way when you're in line at a grocery store, but also for some people that provides comfort and grounding, again, to feel that dog up against the sides of your legs and you can feel their breathing. Let's see, the other thing they're trained to do in public access is exit if you're starting to have a panic attack, or again, if you're having some PTSD symptoms. You can say exit, and they start to pull you to the exit, and they will take you outside so you can get some air, maybe get away from people, lights, noises, and start to settle yourself. So they are trained to find an exit. They are also trained to go get help. For mobility, go get help is critical. If you fall, the dog is trained to lay down next to your face, lick your face, make sure you're conscious, and then you can say, go get help. And the dog is trained to go find the first person that they trust, sit in front of them, make eye contact, and then walk away and keep checking back to make sure that person's following them, and lead them to their handler that's on the ground and needs assistance. For people with PTSD, my daughter doesn't have the mobility problem, but we do use Go Get Help. If she is starting to have a panic attack and would like me or someone else to help her, the dog is trained to go get help and bring me to her, even if she's not laying on the ground. She'll say, go get help. The dog comes to find me in the house, sits in front. When I know the dog sits in front of me and makes eye contact, I know to follow the dog and go seek hi. The other thing they're trained to do is get meds. They're also trained to get keys, wallet, anything else you want them to get. We train like 3 or 4 items, but individual handlers can train for more things. But get meds is critical for someone. If you're having a panic attack and you need your PRN, or if you have a medical disability and you need your medications quickly, the dogs are trained starting with a medication bottle, and then it progresses to your medication bottles in a little case. And it is important that you keep that case in the same place so that they can always go get that and bring it straight to you. They can also be trained to go to the refrigerator and get water for you so you can swallow your medication. And then the other thing, they're trained to turn on and off lights. For some people with PTSD, it's very hard to be in a dark room. They might have a nightmare and want the lights on, and they can tell the dog to go turn the lights on, and the dog will go do that for them. And then some of the PTSD interruption tasks that the dogs are trained to do, and these can be individualized for the handler that they're placed with. But I was really just amazed at all the interruption tasks they can do. So the basic ones they start with is just hand wringing, because oftentimes hand wringing is a sign that you're starting to feel anxious. So they're trained first to start interrupting hand wringing. So if you wring your hands, they bring their nose up underneath your hands and start nudging your hands apart. And they'll keep nudging, and that's a good cue for the handler. Oh, I'm getting anxious. So it helps them to realize they're getting anxious, and maybe there's some other tools I can engage in. Shaking legs, they're trained to notice if a leg is shaking, and they come over and they put their head on top of the leg to stop the shaking and help to ground you. And again, another mental cue. Oh, I'm getting very anxious. The dog kind of helps to cue you the way a person would, but isn't as intrusive as a person. Nightmare interruption tasks, they're trained to interrupt nightmares for PTSD. So if their handler is having a nightmare, the first thing they do is pull the blanket off and the covers off. And if that doesn't wake them up, they progress to licking their face. And if that doesn't wake them up, they can start pawing at them or even jump on the bed to wake them up. And again, some of that is individualized depending on the handler. Some handlers don't want their dog on the bed. Some handlers are fine with their dog on the bed. And then they're also, as I said, they're trained, the training is individualized. So for my daughter, if she's having a panic attack, she doesn't wring her hands and she doesn't shake her leg, but her arms go rigid and her body goes rigid, and she starts to shake a little bit, and then her breathing starts to become very rapid. And so Whisper, the dog we've worked with the longest, we've worked with 3 different dogs in rotation, but Whisper's the one we've kept the longest in rotation. And Whisper will be placed with my daughter. And Brave is right now working with another handler that he'll likely be placed with. But for my daughter, Whisper has been trained when she sees those signs to jump up on her and push her arms down. And that gives Kai a cue that I'm getting overly anxious. And if Kai resists, she keeps jumping and pushing her arms down until Kai sits down. And then she pushes on her to lay down, and then she lies across her wherever Kai can indicate, or wherever, honestly, sometimes Kai can't indicate, and Whisper has this beautiful intuition of lying wherever it is most helpful for Kai. So sometimes she lies across here and puts her head and puts pressure right here, and other times she's lied across her stomach and put pressure on her stomach. Sometimes she lies on her arm and puts pressure on her chest. And she will stay there until the interruption cue, until the completion cue, which is enough. And when you say enough, she'll get up and move away from you. So it's just the most amazing experience to watch everything that these dogs can do to assist an individual with a disability and help them to be a little more active in their world. I mean, the difference for someone with PTSD going into a crowded store or a doctor's appointment where they might be going in with anxiety, and having their dog present, their service dog present and able to mitigate some of that for them is just incredible. I have so much respect for Joy St. Peter's for starting this organization, and as I said, the inmates and all the other puppy socializers. It's just amazing. It's also this amazing social network. If any of you are interested in being puppy socializers, there's just this amazing social piece of going. We go to class once a week in Salem, and I love seeing the other socializers. I love watching the other dogs. The training is fun. I'm not going to say it's not a time commitment. It's a pretty big time commitment. We reinforce the training in our home every day. We try and get them out in the community once a day. Sometimes I'm sure Glenn and my neighbors have seen me many times. We have spent entire days trying to get Whisper to poop and pee on cement. because, you know, they have to be able to poop and pee wherever you cue them to do it within 3 minutes. If you're going to get on an airplane and you need them to do their business, they got to do it where you tell them to do it, because you can't be worrying about that when you're on an airplane. And Whisper's great at it, but it's taken a lot of work. We have spent a lot of time outside on our street. Every half hour, back to that same spot, telling her to pee and poop. So until she does it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had, but I would love to answer questions or just hear thoughts.
Teresa, I was mesmerized by you sharing how sensitive these dogs were. They almost can anticipate your emotions before the person realizes it and gives a command.
Yeah.
Is that something that's taught by the socialization, or is that just innate?
It's partly what the traits that they've bred for, and it's a lot of training and a bond. I mean, they really do. Joy does a really nice job of matching dogs with recipients. But you know, it's kind of interesting too, because they generalize the training into different situations and settings. So for example, this hand wringing, Whisper is really good at it. She's so good at it that when I'm tired and I find myself sitting like at my computer and I'm rubbing like this, she comes up and interrupts it. And you know, for some handlers that might not be okay, they might not want that. And then you can fine tune the training so that they don't do that. But for me, I actually appreciate it because I realize, oh, I am a little bit stressed. And thank you for, and then, you know, and then I can pet her after she's done it and tell her thank you. And it really helps me to feel better too, and to recognize, oh, not only was I tired, but I'm kind of stressed. So they can, you know, they can take the cues even farther. For example, they're trained to open doors and close doors and cupboards and drawers. To open doors, you have to have a French doorknob, and then there's a tug on it, and they pull the tug and then pull it down and pull towards them. And Whisper has really, and many of the dogs do this, she problem solves that very well. So if we're doing some training, there's some trainings where we throw treats, and if one goes under our door, she runs straight to the door, opens the door, runs and gets her treat and comes back. So they're a lot of fun too. They really are, and they're very smart. So Glenn, I think it's training, and the phenomenal foundational training they get from the inmates, but it's also, I think, breeding.
Teresa,
I have a question. Go ahead. Well, my question is, I mean, first of all, Teresa, thanks. This was really interesting. And it sounds like what you're saying is that they need more people for that second, after the inmates start to train the dogs, they need more people to assist with that and take them into like the real world. But afterwards, is it expected that you're just never going to see that dog again? Are people encouraged to maintain some type of relationship with the dog? Do they get to see the dog sometimes? I don't think I could help train a dog that I would never see again.
You know, I honestly don't know the answer for that, because we have only been doing this a year. But what I have seen through the organization is, my guess is it would be dependent on the handler that they were assigned to, the team that they become. Some people may not want that, and some might. Some of the handlers that have received dogs send updates, and they post those on the Facebook page so everyone can see. And this program, what's so nice about this program is if you want to receive a service dog, you have to apply, and then you have a couple of options. You can wait for a fully trained service dog, or you can join into their handler training and become a socializer. And that lowers the cost a little bit of the service dog, and also, or quite a bit. And also, like for us, for my daughter, it's a lot to learn to become a teammate with a service dog. So we felt like by doing the socializing, we would be learning all along. So when it's like that, there's a few other people and right now that are socializing, and they are socializing for receiving a service dog. So those people, we get to see their story as it progresses as well, and I'm sure they'll stay in contact with the organization. Yeah.
Would you say the name of the organization again that you're working with?
Yes, it's Joys of Living Assistance Dogs. Yeah.
How long between when the puppy is started to be trained to being able to go out and be of service? I mean, how long is it? A couple years or?
It's I think honestly, because of the prison program, these dogs train a lot faster than I was aware that dogs could. Different organizations do it differently. Some organizations leave a dog with a handler for like the first year to year and 3 months, and then they matriculate into a service dog university where they get training and then get placed with their teammate. I think this organization with the rotation every 2 weeks, it looks like many of the dogs graduate at about 18 months to 2 years old.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And how much training does the recipient get once they receive their dog?
That's a good question. They have team training, they call it. And those recipients come to Salem and are trained at the facility and in the community for 2 weeks. It's a 2-week training. And I don't want to misspeak. I believe they have to pass public access testing as a team and receive that training for 2 weeks. And then the organization, Joy, is in contact with them. I know throughout in the initial stages of the placement, fine-tuning things, helping them with things. It's a lot to learn in 2 weeks, and you can think something's going well, and then you get home and it starts to unravel a little bit. So they still provide contact and training throughout the placement. And then I really am not sure of, but I think there's a period of time where you need to come back and do a little more training after, I don't know, a couple years, or I don't know. That I shouldn't even say, but we're not there yet, so.
Teresa, I had a question. I'm so intrigued with all that you've been talking about, and I also can just envision the amount of the power of this experience for people who are incarcerated. And I just wondered how many people in the prisons proportionally are able to do this kind of training? I'm sure they're trained as well. And do you have any sense of how big that operation is and if it's expanding at all?
I am not sure how many inmates get to participate. It's something I could ask Joy and get back with you. The inmates themselves go through extensive training, and then Joy, I don't know how she has the energy to do all of this, but pre-COVID, once a week, she would go into each prison and the state hospital and train with them. And then she provides several trainings in Salem and one in Portland for the socializers. But I am really not sure how many inmates.
Yeah, it's a wonderful service to them as well.
It is.
That's great. Just would like to see expand. Thanks.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and I saw Leslie had her hand up. If you want to unmute yourself.
Well, I was just curious, and you may not know anything about this, but I'd read about dogs that were able to smell the presence of cancers. And I've also wondered, I have a golden retriever, and I wondered if they're able to sense or hear our heartbeats. So when our hearts start racing, do you think there's anything to that they are able, because I know has extremely sensitive hearing.
Yeah, I don't know enough about that. I'm sorry. I've heard about things like that, but I'm truly not, I don't have that kind of knowledge. Sorry.
That's okay.
That's great, but thank you, Teresa, so much. That was a really interesting program, and yes, let's give her some hands.